All right, Greg and I are here.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. By the way, we're doing another scout, and we're in another space. And I'm actually looking at this space with Greg and trying to figure out where we're going to shoot 2 interviews. But before we do that, just quickly, I guess, acknowledge a few of the things that we've been noticing.
Right.
First of all, if we weren't shooting interviews for 2 people from a brewery, there's some nice elements inside of the space that we could use. I'm seeing some really beautiful light coming through that garage door, which is this frosted glass.
Yeah.
We could definitely do a nice setup for, to see all those reality shows with people who work on bikes, custom bikes, custom cars. We could do something really cool, set a car outside of there. We could see the silhouette of the car and then shoot an interview or something like that.
Sure.
I also see some pictures up on the walls. They don't necessarily say Topa Topa. So we could shoot something for an entirely different project. So we're just talking about the fact that even though we have a specific goal for these 2 interviews, we can use a space and not necessarily make it read it's a brewery by just looking in other directions, or you'll find those elements in other spaces.
Sure.
Yeah. Lots of mixed lighting. What do you think we should do with that?
Well, our sun is moving pretty quickly here.
Yeah.
With the mixed lighting that we have here, it's not really punchy enough to read in camera.
Yep.
As we were looking in camera just earlier, the little spots are reading sort of as just general washes.
Yep.
And we can really bring those out with our own lighting.
Yeah.
And so I think we might be better to control the light in here, because we don't know how long we're going to be in here or when exactly we're doing the interviews.
Yeah. They're also very toppy, and so they may not be throwing light in exactly the places we want, depending on where we frame up for these things.
Sure.
For Jack, who's one of the owners, we want to shoot an interview. You and I have discussed this already, kind of going down the bar.
Yeah.
We think that works well. I want to make this blackboard, with their different beers, an element there. And if we just take a walk down there quickly, we can take a look at what we were looking at earlier on. We've got a light which is doing the job of putting some light down here. Yeah. But it's not necessarily going to be the color temperature that we want. It doesn't allow us to sort of control how much light is coming out.
Right.
So I think, like you were saying, we rig something, do you think?
Yeah, we can just throw up a small little pepper up there and just allow it to, we can even adjust the color temperature on there to focus it.
Or maybe even something like that Lowcaster, which is a little bit more of a wash.
Sure.
And then we can just dial in the color temperature, just depending. I guess we'll figure that out when we build it up.
Yeah.
And when we do the breakdown later on, we'll tell you what we wound up with. Let's get into a frame. So I would be looking, you would be over here potentially. I do want that blackboard to be over one of his shoulders, so this could work. And then we look there, and let's kind of look at what potentially, let's go super wide on the frame just so we can see what happens and back it off a little. We could do something like this. We've got this little feature with the Topa Topa. I don't know if we'll wind up doing it, and maybe if you can just smash right up against the wall over there, Greg, so we get even further back. So that's just a rough frame, but we might be able to do something like that, and he's looking camera, left. And then we can go in for our tight shot, and let's just see what we have. And we don't know what lens we're going to be using, but we can see that. And let's get a little bit more of the blackboard over the shoulder, just as an option. That might be nice. We've got that growler up on that top shelf. We may not even need to move that. So we'll just kind of play around with, our options. But to me, I think this is where we're building this.
I think we're getting dialed in here, yeah.
Yeah. I think I also want to go over some things having to do with playing with color temperatures. And if we're going to black out the space, let's go ahead and think about how we want that contrast. Do we want a warm-warm? Do we want a cool-warm? Do we want a warm-cool?
Sure.
And we'll make sure we test that out and figure out where we settle.
Cool.
I think I'm leaning towards one, but we'll see where we wind up with everything. All right?
Sounds good.
If we set our lights the right way and we use bicolor lights that give us that option, then we can just dial that in and we can figure out what we want. So I think that's it. We'll have to figure out whether we need any separation, but to me it's going to be a key coming from over here. We're going to have a B camera. Why don't you swing over for a B camera shot, and let's just see a tighter shot, and maybe just walk in a little bit closer towards me, and let's figure out where that's going to be if I was looking camera left. So we'll have to kind of play around with this. We might move Jack forwards or backwards along the bar line a little bit to get that B camera angle to look pretty good. but we do have that as a consideration, and we do want to make sure that that frame looks good as well. I think we're going to get enough light from this and a little bit of fill that we probably won't have to add a lot more
Right.
to get that second camera angle to work, but we'll tweak that and then we'll break that down later. Is that
Sounds
cool?
good. Yeah.
All right. Number 2, somebody behind the bar. So I'm going to walk behind the bar.
do it.
This is kind of the bartender's domain. They're going to move between the taps. We've got an order sign here, which actually got put up when we walked into the space. This is brand new. This seems to be where people come up and they get, if they're not sitting at the bar and they're going into the patio, this is where they're going to come up and get a beer, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like it makes a lot of sense. This feels very, if we shoot in this direction, and let's take a look at the frame.
Yeah.
You know, if we shoot in this direction, it feels pretty sterile. There's not a lot of warmth here, and I do want this space to read pretty warm. I don't know if this necessarily is what we're looking for, and we were kind of looking for a little bit of warmth, right?
Yeah, and it feels pretty flat. But with the controlling of the light on all the windows,
Yeah.
we can warm it up, cool it up, however we need to.
If we're doing a dolly push for like a Wes Anderson film, this could be great if we framed this up the right way,
Yep.
and it would be a nice shot,
Yep.
and we could do that. But I think we want some depth, and we want a little bit of interest there.
Yeah.
So maybe we push over here where we were talking about doing that, and we go down the opposite line. And again, we can take a look at this, you know, camera right or camera left. Let's look at the camera right just to see what'll happen if I'm looking camera right. We kiss the lockers over there and we get the background out of the way, but depending on what f-stop we're going to be shooting at, maybe let's see what our camera left looks like. And yeah, I kind of like that. I mean, we've got something to deal with the fire alarm thing, and we might have to deal with that. But if we bring the pictures into the frame a little bit more, depending on where our talent's going to be situated, I think we're not going to notice that fire alarm thing as much, or we might be able to just do something to dress that a little bit.
Definitely.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
What about our B if I'm looking camera left? What would we be looking at? So we
Have
bring
those
those
pictures in the
pictures
background,
but
yeah.
they're going to fall soft, especially if we put like a 70 to 200 on there, right?
Right.
We'll make that a pretty tight shot.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty good. I think we'll play with these frames a little bit, but I think those are pretty interesting. We could put a little bit of light on those too.
Yeah.
Just to kind of.
What are you thinking of lighting for here, this area?
So for Jack, I'm thinking we either push through a frame or we bounce off of a frame. You and I talked about the fact that the person who's going to be standing here, one of 2 talent who are both female.
Yeah.
And it might be a good place to talk about getting into something that is approximating beauty lighting.
Okay.
It's a little flatter, but we've got some nice depth in the space. And if we create some ratios, because we're blacking out the space and
Right.
it's just not all one light level, then
Yeah.
it won't feel completely high key, even though we are using that beauty lighting. I think that'd be cool.
That would be definitely
So
cool. Yeah.
probably pushing through a frame, and you know, if we're saying that our A camera is going to be where Ben is right now, then that light is a source that's coming basically from there and a little bit above. Could be coming through a skylight or something like that.
Sure.
And this is a perfect example of why we want to turn this light off as well.
Right.
Because we want to be able to control how that looks. And then the last thing that we need to deal with in this space, and it's a pretty easy one, is the little collective party that's going to happen later on. There's going to be actual patrons here, and then there are people who are part of this collective. We don't want to shoot that outside. We already discussed it.
Yeah.
The double doors are going to be open, so I'm going to come around from the bar. And I'm kind of thinking about doors open. There's going to be warm light in there. Let's get a China ball with a bicolor on a stand that's battery operated, and maybe you up on sticks with a slider or on a monopod. We'll have to decide.
Yeah.
I think that could work.
That'll work.
1 or 2
There's
people.
gonna be a lot of people walking around, so the less stuff we have in the way.
Yeah. You just have to have them
faster
kill the
will work.
music.
Yeah.
And maybe looking out here because we haven't seen much of this frame yet. And somebody standing inside of this space. So, that would be doors open and then coming into this direction. And
Right.
then, depending on how it feels, we could also find another frame coming down the bar that's slightly different than Jack's, but still seeing outside. What do you think?
Maybe that sounds good.
Yeah. I think that's pretty
Take a look
simple.
at that frame.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. So those doors will be open and there'll be activity and there'll be people, and maybe we'll go a little bit wider because we want to make sure that we see that they have a beer in their hand.
Yeah.
We'll kind of figure out, but it may be something like that. I think we probably go a little bit more on an angle though.
Sure.
So that we're seeing less of the signage and things like that. So maybe something like this.
Sure.
And they're probably going to be, we'll have to decide, they're either going to talk directly to camera. Actually, they won't because we got all the other ones off camera. So maybe we split the difference and we'll do one camera right.
And then one camera
And then
left.
that'll be now coming off of the other shoulder
Right.
than it was for Jack. And then we'll figure out another frame where, we can get out those doors again or figure something else. Or even tucked
Maybe
in
just
this
even into
corner,
this corner.
we've got a couple of people talking here.
Yeah.
And we'll frame it up where we get a little bit of this, but that's open. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but we'll work around it. So I think that's basically it. We're going to black out the space, turn off all the lights. We're going to build up our own thing. We've got a setup right now for our first interview.
Right.
Because from what I understand, we've got about half an hour, 45 minutes until Jack comes in.
Good stuff.
So we're going to go do that.